You are listening to the 2 and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
I'll pass up on the $25 million payday.
Yeah, if I can't play 6 games of MLB The Show and a couple games of Madden and a game of NHL while I drink 20 Cokes in a day, you couldn't pay me enough.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the 2 and Out CFL podcast.
Now they have to kick it out, and they do!
Every week, Travis Currah.
Does anybody still care about this podcast?
And Brazilian Ty.
Hunters are people, too.
Talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Are you kidding? This is unbelievable!
Ready, set, hunt!
And we are part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. Happy spring! Maybe the ugliest season of them all. In Alberta, everything is just brown, covered in gravel. This is a terrible season until about May.
The only good thing is that there's baseball on TV every night now. So, there's always something to watch, especially with the Oilers out of the playoffs. But I'm really tired of being absolutely covered in mud when I get back from work.
I can get behind that. I got to say a shout-out to you, Brazilian Ty, being the bankroll of the podcast. You got us our Grey Cup tickets. The 100% credit to you. I'm waiting for my tax return from the Fed so I can pay you back.
Well, it's just like I told you over text messages. I better not see any posts on Facebook with brand new TVs or anything.
That's a good plan. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and then we get to Calgary and our seats don't actually exist again.
Oh, sorry. That $1,300, oh man, it went a long way. Did you survive April Fool's unscathed?
No. I got fooled a little bit.
What got you?
So I'm a degenerate gambler, as we all know.
Yeah.
And we got a text message saying no more gambling at work. And this was at 2 in the afternoon. We're like, oh, damn.
How do you gamble at work?
Oh, there's ways.
On your phone or
There's ways.
What do you do?
I can't disclose all the info.
You have an underground gambling ring at work?
to protect the innocent/guilty. But there is some, I have bet on baseball every day since the season started as well, so.
But they can't prove that.
Yeah, they can. It's on my phone. Oh. And I did put money into, we did squares for the last Oiler-Flames game of the year as well. So, but yeah, it was all just a hoax.
There was an airline that said they were going to sell standing room only tickets, and I had seen that maybe airlines were considering this to squeeze more people onto the plane. Kind of like, a stand-up roller coaster where they strap you in, and then, of course, the people in front of you are, 2 feet in front of you, and they can squeeze more people on. So then I saw this, and I was like, whoa. And there were $3 tickets from Edmonton to Vancouver, and I'm like, I can afford $3 to go to Vancouver. I'm only standing for 90 minutes.
I bought standing room tickets for an Oiler game, which they won, thankfully, that night I went. This was still when it was at Rexall. And the only advantage was that I didn't have to, because I tend to like to have a good time when I go to sporting events. The only advantage to the standing room tickets, we were super close to the bathroom, and I didn't have to bother anybody getting in and out of my chair.
Yeah, that is nice. That is nice.
But my feet were super sore when we walked home from the LRT.
Speaking of hockey, Stanley Cup playoffs are going to start next week. Who are you picking?
Oh, I really wanted Jets-Flames West Final and the Leafs to make the Stanley Cup Final so that the salary cap goes way up and solves some of the Oilers' problems for them. But it's really hard. I really see a Jets-Tampa Final, which I have zero interest in, but I think that's where we're headed.
For me, as long as Toronto loses, I'm okay.
My pick could change. My pick could change depending on who I get in my playoff draft.
Yeah, would you mind putting down $100 on Vegas for me? And if they win the cup, I'll pay you back out of the winnings.
Oh, okay, good. You don't want to split it or anything?
No, I'll just give you your $100 back.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, seems good.
In the Huddle with Currah and Ty on the 2 and Out podcast.
We got a lot to catch up on because it's been a while since we've done a show. Let's just start with saying and mentioning the Combine happened about a week and a half ago. There were...
That was a fun Sunday at work for me.
Nice. So what were there? About 18 players globally that came to this and a part of the CFL 2.0 initiative, which is really cool. Some of the scouts said, hey, they fit right in with the Canadian kids. I won't bore you with all the results of the Combine, but I thought what was really cool was the new Wilson football that they brought that helped measure some things with the quarterbacks, like how hard they're throwing, the spin rate, and the release time. And I was just kind of blown away that they had this football and they were using it. Canadian quarterback Chris Merchant was the one that led in all categories there. He throws a football 50 miles an hour. I'm pretty sure my little baby hands would not be able to handle that on the other side of it.
might chip a nail.
Yeah, I have the hands of probably a 9-year-old child.
That could play D-line.
I guess I have big palms and stuff, but man, my hands have nothing manly about them except hair.
Yeah, if your hands aren't manly, imagine how bad mine are.
But you actually work with your hands and do things with your hands.
I do have calluses, which is really good because golf season's coming too.
Yeah.
But with this ball, the next logical step is goal line technology, is it not?
I think so. Just the chip
has to be.
So they know that as soon as it's crossed the plane, I guess all they would have to know if the knee's down or not in advance, and I think that would make reviews a whole lot easier.
Oh, it'd be 100% easier, and not only easier, but it would be evidence that it would be almost irrefutable, right? As long as you could see, if you can freeze it when the knee goes down, and because you could timestamp it and then timestamp and look at the timestamp on the ball, you could tell if it was in or not. It would take all the judgment away. And I know people want the human element, but at some point, if we have the technology to get it right, we might as well get it right.
And the one question I do have about the Combine is, why do these players even show up? The ones that are told by their agents not to perform. Doesn't it just waste everyone's time?
Not really. Sure, you don't get to see them do the drills, but you get them measured. You get weight, height. You can interview them still, and some teams put a lot of importance on those interviews and how a guy answers questions or how he reacts to some questions, and that could be huge for a team based solely on maybe a character aspect if they're looking at a guy a little more in depth.
How many Fortnite questions were brought up at the interviews?
Oh, I bet you there was quite a few, and it would be just it would only take one. Like, do you play Fortnite? Yes. Okay, you're done here.
Yeah, you've fallen down the draft boards.
Yeah.
So what was that? The Philadelphia Phillies, Carlos Santana last year. They were playing so much Fortnite, he took a bat to a TV in the clubhouse, like.
Yeah, and there was rumors that Russ Martin was doing it during September because he wasn't playing.
Wow.
During September call-ups, so yeah, it's creeping in. And there's NHL teams now that you're not allowed to take it. You can't even take your PS4 on the road, on road trips and stuff. And the Jays now have there is a curfew for video games in the clubhouse. I was reading, so like before game time at a certain time, the machines get shut off, and MLB Network gets put on or whatever, and everybody goes to work. So it has become a problem. And I'm not going to lie, I play a lot of video games still, but I don't take it to work usually.
I used to want to be a pro athlete, but if they're going to limit my Fortnite, I'll pass up on the $25 million payday.
Yeah, if I can't play 6 games of MLB The Show and a couple games of Madden and a game of NHL while I drink 20 Cokes in a day, you couldn't pay me enough.
It's not worth it.
No.
Have you played Fortnite?
No, not a single second.
Neither have I. And the game's free. So I guess we just missed that generation by a few years.
Yeah, that or, you have to play online and interact with people, and that just sounds terrible.
Let's go through some player news individually here. We'll start with the Eskimos, who signed Mikael Brooks on the defensive line, and he was actually a big deal with the Riders last year. He was really noticeable when he was in there for the running game, and when he was not in there, teams were able to run a little bit more effectively on the Riders. So that's a big add for the Eskimos. They also able to re-sign fullback Alex Dupuis, and I really like this news about the Esks. They sign slot back Fred Stamps to a one-day contract so he can retire in Edmonton. Eskimo, he will be at the June 14th game against Montreal and get a proper send-off there. I think they were selling $22 tickets in the lower bowl to get more people out to that game against the Owls. And
for the next 222 hours.
Yes, he's one of those players that it just shows that not every great career has a fairy tale ending. Not every athlete gets to choose the way they go out, like, Henry Burris. There's more stories like this where a guy has a great career, they go to training camp, or they just say, hey, you're too expensive in the offseason, we're going to trade you or not re-sign you, and they kind of just fade away. So it's pretty cool that Stamps gets to get his proper send-off with the Eskimo faithful.
Mm-hmm. And as an Eskimo, we had 5 straight years at over 1,000 yards.
He was a hell of a receiver.
Just under 8,000 yards total. 49 touchdowns. He was a really big part of that offense. From basically 2009 to 2013. And then even when they traded away Ricky Ray, he was still able to produce, and it just goes to show how dedicated he was to the game of football. But at 37 years old, I mean, it's really hard to keep up. He hasn't played since 2015. It's really hard for a guy at that age to, be a viable player. I know there's guys that do it, but it's hard at that age. But yeah, like you said, for him to go out the way he kind of wanted to at the end, more or less, being able to retire as an Eskimo is pretty cool. I think, where he had all of his success mainly. It's just too bad he was never able to get over the hump and get a Grey Cup. That kind of sucks because, he just seems like such a nice guy.
Yeah.
And as for Mikael Brooks, that D-line already has him on Sewell, Alex Bazzi, and Kwaku Boateng on it. I don't know if they needed much more help.
But they'll take it.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment.
The Saskatchewan Roughriders end up signing a few players to one-day contracts and letting them retire, and Tristan Jackson and Macho Harris. But this signing, I think, has kind of gone under the radar a little bit. They were able to sign offensive lineman Dakota Shepley to a 2-year deal, which is a big, big deal. He was their first-round pick in the 2018 CFL draft. He went to UBC, and he signed as an undrafted free agent with the New York Jets last year. He did the training camp with them and played in a few preseason games. So if he's able to come up and play, right tackle like some people are projecting, that's pretty big for the Rider offensive line in the running game and, pass protection too.
And another Canadian on that offensive line, 2-year deal, like you said, option for 2021. This is huge. With Chris Jones gone now, wasn't a big fan of him as a coach, as I've said, but as a GM, he was able to build a pretty good team with, one glaring hole behind center. But, you get a kid like this who could be, if he does stay in the league for a couple of years, he could be one of the best offensive linemen, and going forward for a team that needs to, at some point develop a quarterback, and they have William Powell right now to help take a lot of the load off. Adding to the offensive line is really good news for the Riders.
Drake Nevis re-signs in Winnipeg on a 1-year deal on the defensive line. And as we go to Toronto, I want to mention Matt Black, who ends up retiring and joining the Argos front office. And I just love that story from 2017 when he was released in the middle of the season. And then they end up bringing him back, and he makes the game-winning interception on Bo Levi Mitchell in the snow in Ottawa to win the Grey Cup. It was one of the coolest stories for a Canadian kid, so I'm sure the Argos will be happy to have him staying with the organization.
He's got 2 Grey Cups with his hometown team, one in Toronto.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's so, and like you said, it's a total redemption story. You know, him coming back after being released and makes that play late in the fourth quarter to pretty much steal the game for the Argos is just awesome. And you know, for him to, and especially you don't see, you don't see guys respond. Well, you see guys respond like that, but you know, to get released in the middle of the year, and then when you bring a guy back, it almost just seems like, well, we made kind of a mistake, or you know, everybody's injured, and it kind of seems like last resort because you don't want to bring a guy back and look stupid. But it turned out to be arguably the best move of the year, you know, with them winning the Grey Cup.
I also want to mention James Wilder Jr., who's in for the battle of his life at training camp this year because they've got Tyrell Sutton, Chris Rainey.
They only got 700 running backs.
Yeah, and Brandon Burks. They just signed all of the running backs, so he's in tough to be the guy carrying the rock next season for the Argos. But he was invited for a WWE tryout. He's only 26 years old, and as a big wrestling fan, we've seen this a lot. They bring guys in that are athletes, and they go to see if they can end up turning them into wrestlers over the next few years. So, man, if he shows up in the WWE in the next 3-4 years, man, that would be cool.
Like, would you put him with Brock Lesnar just because of the 2 football guys, and then maybe throw, like, you could almost reinvent the Shield, but it could be something else with him, Roman Reigns, and Brock Lesnar?
Well, and Wilder's a big boy. He's 6'3", 232 pounds. He's got the body type to be a wrestler.
oh, for sure. And
we
know he's got
too.
the athletic. And we know he has the athletic ability. That could be really fun to watch. That being said, if he goes that route, I think his playing days are pretty much done. But I mean, with what happened this week, I mean, there's less jobs out there now, so you know, it might just be if he gets cut from Toronto, it might just be, you know, that this is it, and if he can get on in WWE, all the power to him.
WrestleMania 35 from New York City this weekend. What's your plan for the big show?
Probably be stuck in camp. Internet might be good enough to stream it on my WWE Network account.
All right.
If not, I will have to get text updates from Kendall.
Oh man, I'll be loving WrestleMania 35. I love how it's like 8 hours long now too. People complain about how long it is, but I've been to WrestleMania twice, once in Dallas and once in New Orleans. If I'm paying $450 for a ticket and I'm getting a 7.5 hour event, I'm a happy guy.
Like, if you start drinking during the pre-show, you'll sober up by, like, you can sober up by the main event.
Man, and I almost went to New York this year. I just canceled the hotels about a month ago. I don't know when I'll be going to WrestleMania again, but that one stung. We stick with the Argos a little bit here. I love this. Their June 22nd game against the Hamilton Tiger Cats was going to be an evening game. But the Arkells, who actually have a Ticats song that used to be a mainstay on this show, put out a tweet saying, "We make a motion to move the Ticats and Argos game on June 22nd to a 4 o'clock start. Game ends. Everybody walks 300 feet from BMO to the Budweiser stage, and we rock out at an Arkells show." And it only took less than an hour. And the CFL said, "Yeah, we'll move the game to a 4 o'clock start, and we'll have fun at the Arkells show after the game." I love that.
See, and that would be an unreal weekend.
No kidding, man.
Also that weekend in Edmonton, so the Eskimos have a home game on the Friday night on the 21st. 22nd, April Wine and Trooper at Remax Field for $10.
Are you hinting at something?
I might have to book some time off. But I'm just saying, that's a pretty good weekend for Canadian music.
Oh, yeah. It totally
If it was
is.
1980.
Before we get to some of the meat and potatoes and behind-the-scenes stuff of this thing, I have to say thank you to Park Power for sponsoring the podcast today, a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. That is so awesome. So I think we got a tweet saying, hey, we got to keep using the PETA-approved sayings here. So if you're bringing home the bagels and you're able to save money on your power bill, you can buy even more bagels, Brazilian Ty.
Yeah, but I'm cutting out bread, so bagels don't appeal to me. Well, they really do appeal to me because I love bread so much, but it makes me so sick. But yeah, I'd rather just kill two birds with one stone.
No, you're feeding two birds with one scone.
No, I am a curmudgeon. I refuse to change. Change is bad.
So I know who you're voting for in the election then?
I'm not voting. I'm a Saskatchewan resident, remember?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about it.
Park Power is just regretting being associated with us. Thank you to Park Power. The beauty of being in this province is that you get to choose where you buy your energy from. So they've got a low overhead, and chances are you're going to save money if you switch. If you go to their website, parkpower.ca, you can pick up the calculator on there, type in what you're paying right now. It'll show you right away what you're going to save, so you can make the switch at parkpower.ca.
Can I send them my Sask power bill, and they can run a line to my condo on the Sask side? Because my power bill for a month I was not home was $238.
What?
I don't know what happened. I don't know if my mom's going up there and drinking all the beer in my fridge and leaving the fridge open, or what's going on. But it was like it was 4 times what it was when I was home the month before. So I don't know what's going on.
And you live a block and a half into Saskatchewan.
Yeah, like 2 blocks. Like you just run it to the border, and I'll just get an extension cord. Something.
Yeah, I need a 700-foot extension cord, please.
Well, no, you just get a bunch of them timed together.
Oh, man. Let's talk about the proposed rule changes that have been brought up. The NFL is continuing to adopt CFL rule changes here and there. They're going to do the reviewing the passing plays thing. So it'll be fun to see people complaining over that during the Sunday night and Monday nighters.
They already are. Like, oh, the game is going to take so much longer. And I was like, no, you idiots. They're not adding the number of challenges. They're just adding to the things you can challenge. Every coach uses both their challenges anyway, for the most part.
They do.
It's not going to change anything. Like, just shut up.
So, I like this. Coaches should be entitled to a second challenge if their first one is successful, giving them a potential maximum of 2 per game instead of just 1. I kind of like the just 1. I might be okay with going back to having none, but you get the second challenge if your first is successful. I can live with that.
Yeah, that I'm fine with that. If a guy wants to go fishing and early in the game to try to switch momentum and doesn't get anything, well, you lost it and you lost timeout, so it's be the same as it was last year. But if a coach is smart and keeps his challenge and is able to use it when he knows that he's going to win and get a second one, then that's an advantage to not looking for a call and knowing what the call should be and knowing you can challenge it and when to challenge. We see guys a lot of times when they had to, one was just strictly for fishing, and save it for later, or just try to keep a drive alive to get points on the board early or something like that. And now with only one, that kind of went away, which has been nice. So I don't see it changing much, having to get it right to get a second one. I just worry that late in the game. Because you still have to have a timeout to use it, so you can't really go fishing and just hope if you don't have a timeout. So I don't see any issues with it.
I guess even with the one challenge, they can fish late in the game either, or two. So
yeah,
if
but
they really saved it for then anyway.
Yeah, and I don't know why you could, but and like everybody's like, oh, well, what about they're going to be challenging the Hail Mary and all that stuff at the end of the game? It's like, well, no, because you can't challenge in the final 2 minutes, so they won't be challenging that. So I don't know where all the pushback's coming from the NFL, but. Yeah, you could still fish even with the one. Do you want to waste the time if you're down by 3? Do you want to take that chance of looking for a call that might not be there and losing a timeout and then not having any time to run plays to get down the field?
The rest of the proposed rule changes kind of have to do with player safety or the severity of the punishments dished out for headshots and things like that. They want maybe the command center to have the ability to upgrade a 15-yard roughing the passer penalty to a 25-yard penalty for a direct blow to the quarterback's head.
Matt Nichols is never going to look up.
Allowing the command center to assist refs with called and non-called roughing the passer penalties, which, yes, give the power to the eye in the sky or whatever we're calling it these days.
Absolutely.
And if a player receives 2 25-yard penalties in the same game, he'd be disqualified from that game. I kind of feel like if you get 1 25-yard penalty, you should be booted.
To a point. Well, I guess it's like in hockey. If you hit somebody from behind, there is no 2-minute penalty. If it's called checking from behind, it's 5 in a game. So I'd be okay with that. For the amount of times where it is a significant blow, that would be a 25-yard penalty. I'd be okay with a one and done.
CBA discussions, I guess they're ongoing. But the possibility of reducing the number of Canadian starters from 7 to 5 has been brought up. And I guess we've been through this fight on social media a few weeks ago. What do you make of this possibility, though?
I understand where the league's coming from. They added partnerships with all these other countries. So I understand wanting the roster spots there, or the opportunity for roster spots there. With expansion coming possibly to the East Coast, the Canadian talent is all, and I don't mean to crap on the guys, but I mean the Canadian talent for guys that aren't offensive linemen or defensive linemen for that matter is getting stretched thin, and that is a fault of the league to a point, and the development programs of the teams and stuff trying to develop young Canadian talent. So that's a two-way street. It's not just because they have to have those guys. They need to develop them better at grassroots level all the way up through. So, I mean, dropping down to 5, you're not. I would leave it at 7 now and drop down to 5 when expansion comes in, because you're not. You're still going to lose some jobs, but the talent will be better. Just like I know I keep going back to hockey, but with the original 6. You had to be the top 36 defensemen to play in the NHL. That was it. There was only 6 teams, 6 defensemen on each team. And so they had to be good. The talent was better. As expansion came, you saw the bottom feeders come in, and the Oilers are still there lately, which is pathetic. But if they can find a happy medium, maybe keeping it 7, like I said, moving to 5 with expansion, you keep the best possible talent available to teams. I don't see the big issue. I would never go to 0, and I wouldn't want to go below 5. But I mean, at the same time, 7. If you have a management team and a coaching staff like they do in Winnipeg, it's that is able to develop Canadian talent like they have. Granted, I mean, they got Andrew Harris from BC, but it's more of an advantage to them, but I don't see a huge issue with it being 5.
I think there are so many different ways you can go with this discussion. So if they cut it down to 5 and we expand to 10 teams, then if my math is right, that's 50 Canadian starters. Right now there are 63, so there's even less Canadian starters if we go down to 5. Yes. If we go to 6, then there'd be 60 Canadian starters, but you do need to, come up with Canadian backups and things like that. But I don't think anybody's arguing that it's not a problem or it is a problem that a backup Canadian offensive lineman or something gets paid, $30,000 more than a starting American cornerback.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest issue is the pay scale.
But I think if they cut it down to 5, I almost think that's too drastic, because part of it is that Canadian players, we don't have the development systems that the Americans do, because they start playing football when they're like 3. So they get that support through their whole lives. A lot of Canadian kids only get the 3 years in high school and then the 4 years of university, and then they're thrown into the pros, but they've got to be developed in the CFL as well. If they cut it down to 5, I could actually see teams just going with 4 Canadian offensive linemen and then hiding a Canadian, wideout somewhere, where it would just be a lot tougher for defenders or other skill positions to ever make it big in the Canadian game. And I know we're kind of limited when it comes to the skill guys. You got your Andrew Harris, and he's not playing anymore, but Andy Fantus, and these guys come and they...
Brad Sinopoli.
Yeah, exactly. They come and they're all-stars in the league, Canadian or American. But what is the incentive for the teams that continue to develop Canadians if they cut it all the way down to 5? That feels a little bit too drastic to me. And I think it adds another wrinkle to the Canadian game. I love the discussions among fans. If we can't talk about salaries and salary cap management with our teams, there's a nice wrinkle there talking about the ratio and how things can change an entire team when, injuries happen here at that position or that position. So I love that. Obviously, teams want it down because it makes it a lot easier on GMs. GMs were whining before the AAF started up because the international player pool was shrinking, or you'd have to compete even more for those guys. So the GMs are kind of in it for themselves.
Job security.
Yeah, exactly. They want it to be easier for them, not to have to worry about developing and nurturing the Canadian talent, 7 or 8 years until they get to their full potential. But at the end of the day, it is the Canadian Football League, and I kind of like it the way it is. I feel like the Canadian talent has kind of caught up since Ottawa joined the league, and there's probably going to be even more of, the talent will spread out even thinner when the Schooners come into the league, so we'll probably see a little bit of a dip then. But hopefully, long-term, the Schooners coming into the league will get more kids in Atlantic Canada taking up football and moving through the college ranks and coming to the CFL. And maybe they want to change the definition of a Canadian as well. If somebody's been in the league for 5 years on one team or something like that, they get to call so-and-so a Canadian. Or maybe these international guys come up and they go through U Sports, and if they get trained in U Sports, then hey, we can designate them as a national on the roster.
Make it like a CanCon situation with music.
Yes, I think there's something to be said about that as well. But I think it's the Canadian Football League, and it's a fun discussion to have. We do not have to, throw rocks at each other online if we don't agree.
Well, what's the point? What's the point if we're not going to, though? Really?
Yeah. Is that fun if we're not fighting and swearing? And
oh man, it was hard to stay off Twitter for those couple days when they were having their meetings, and then this came up. Oh, she got heated and funny,
did.
And I had a little bit of an inside source at work, so we were chatting a little bit, and yeah, he was just like, I understand where everybody's coming from, but everybody online just needs to cool it.
But the players don't even agree.
Yeah.
I mean, if the players can't agree, I don't know what they can really get done. And we will talk about the AAF. That is still to come. I did mention the Schooners and them coming in and possibly thinning out the Canadian herd even more. But Moncton, New Brunswick will be the host of Touchdown Atlantic this year in August between the Argos and the Owls. I think that one was a little bit expected. Tickets for that one are going to go on sale April 15th. So if you're listening in Atlantic Canada, buy those tickets up and show that, yes, a team will work in Atlantic Canada. And it's been kind of quiet on the Schooners front. And just last week, they kind of came out with a proposal on the stadium site, Shannon Park in Halifax, and kind of a proposal on the stadium as well. They want it to be a facility that will be used over 300 days a year by different community organizations. And honestly, the proposal looks pretty bare bones, kind of like BMO Field when it was first built. And I think we're going to have more of that than we do Lansdowne in Ottawa. Maybe sort of a combination there of what Ottawa and Toronto has for their football stadiums.
Yeah, and you know, we need to get shovels in the ground, do all this. It doesn't need to be huge. Leave room for expansion, and if you host a Grey Cup like Regina used to do, and have the temporary seating, and you can build on it much like they have with BMO, and build as you go, kind of, and get the base where you can start having games, and then expand the stadium, and maybe you can create a district like they have, in Ottawa, Toronto, comes to other leagues, Edmonton with Ice District and stuff like that. The LA Kings with LA Live, and making an event, and the cheaper the stadium, I shouldn't say cheaper. The smaller the stadium you can survive with to start, the better off you're going to be, because your overhead is going to be lower, and it's going to be easier to add on and expand in the future. And set the team up for success that way.
I hope we get this confirmed and figured out by Canada Day. That was kind of the deadline that they had told City Council, or City Council had said. I hope things get figured out. I'm not as optimistic as I was 6 months ago. I don't know if anybody really is, but man, I'm still.
Well, 6 months ago we were at the Atlantic Schooners party, getting drunk, eating lobster rolls, and they announced the name.
Yeah.
Which hey, 2-0 breaking news, by the way. When they left it up on the screen, I'm surprised we weren't asked to leave.
They took it down about 2 minutes after I tweeted it. But.
Yeah, all they would have to do was walk around and be like, "Hey, you two, GTFO."
Yeah, who are the only two people in here sitting at a table drinking Keefs? Yeah, it's those fools over there.
Who's the jerk drinking double whiskey and refusing to eat lobster?
Oh, that's Ty. And we talk about multi-use stadiums and, something being in use 300 times out of the year. That was the vision for Mosaic Stadium in Regina. It's a city-owned stadium. So when the prospect of the Raiders and the Packers having a preseason game there this August was brought up, it looked like it was going to be pretty cool. There were people that are NFL fans and not CFL fans talking to me about, as a season ticket holder, maybe getting them pre-sale tickets or going with them to the game in Regina to check out this event. And now it's not going to happen. The Riders had a hand in it, basically saying, no, we don't want our field messed with 2 days before a game. Now, when the thing first happened, I thought the Riders were on bye. But they wanted to do this game either the day before or 2 days before a Rider game.
I think it was crazy close.
Yeah, but either way, the Riders shouldn't have a say in it when they don't own the stadium. The city made a mistake by stitching in the colored turf in there so it's not easily changed over. That is on the design of the stadium, because even when the soccer game was in there, it looks stupid when you're painting it a wrong shade of green. That's not the I don't even know if the NFL would be down with that, playing a game on. And
then you have to move the goalposts, and that can be a real pain in the ass. And the fields, and like you said, yeah, they stitched it all in. But I mean, you're gonna have to paint everything, and then paint over it again, and that's a lot of work, and to turn everything around in that amount of time. It's going to be pushing it.
So the CEO of Everaz did say they'd be able to put it on. It would just be tough to pull off, but I just look at it as a missed opportunity. Pilsner Place could have easily been the black hole for the Raiders, And while I wouldn't have gone to the game, I really don't care to drive 16 hours for a preseason NFL game. I'm not going to drive 16.
Yeah, when starters are going to play one series.
Yeah, and I'm not going to drive 16 hours for a CFL preseason game either. So
No.
I really don't care if Antonio Brown and Aaron Rodgers are out there throwing a ball around. So, but some people did look at it as a cool opportunity. Not only would it put...
Not Bob Irvin.
Yeah, yeah. But not only would it put, the Raiders and the Packers on the map for some fans on the prairies, but don't you think it would put the Riders on the map for some American players possibly looking at saying, whoa, they've got awesome facilities up there. Mm-hmm. If the NFL thing doesn't work out, there are places to play with 30,000 fans in the stands.
I think that could be a factor, for wanting to have the game, get the eyes, especially on the stadium, with it being brand new and just a really, really awesome facility. When you get it full, it gets loud, and it's a great experience, great atmosphere. And like you're saying, if this NFL thing doesn't work out, the guys are in training camp. They could get cut after the game.
They could, yeah,
and maybe walk down the hallway and sign a contract. So. But at the same time too, like you said, getting eyes on the Riders. I mean, they would be telling the people on TV, this is a CFL stadium, this is the team that plays here, and they'd probably end up showing some highlights. I'm sure, get some rights and show mosaic highlights. Not that there would be very much now, but. It could get eyes, but I get where the Riders are coming from, not wanting it, because that's a lot of work and a lot of stress to turn that stadium over in under 2 days, and you'd have to replenish everything with probably two groups of 30,000 people in there. It'd be a lot to get done. I know Everaz says they could do it, but the minute something would go wrong, that everybody would be pointing fingers and saying, "See, the NFL is trying to ruin us." So I get why this isn't going.
I don't think it's a loss for the Riders. I think it's a bit of a loss for the city, though. It was just another event to be at that stadium.
Right? Exactly. It takes away tourism dollars and stuff like that. I totally understand that aspect of it, for sure.
Speaking of other leagues...
or lack thereof. No.
Some people thought this... I want to start with this one. Well, no, we'll start with this. The AAF... has suspended operation, and I'm honestly just kind of blown away by all of this, because all the hype when it started was how much money they had, and they had a few seasons of money in the bank, and they were going to be okay if they made it through this season. But
and then
52 days into it, operations have been suspended. But I don't know what they expected, because there's zero. Any league could start up, and I don't care what it is, it's not going to make money in the first season.
No, that's really tough.
You have to be willing to lose money to make it work, and obviously they're not.
So week 2, they had trouble paying players.
Yeah.
So CEO of the Carolina Hurricanes, Tom Dundon, stepped in. with the cash infusion. He said it was $250 million, which it wasn't all in one lump sum. He's lost $70 million since then on this league. They are not drawing. The football quality is not that great. The offensive line play has gotten better, but it was atrocious the first couple games. They're in markets that don't already have football, save for Atlanta and was it Houston? But those are huge markets, football markets as it is. But this is just proof that people don't want. And I know the NFL is a 365-day news cycle, but people don't want more. We don't need more football than there already is. There needs to be. You need to miss it at some point, and it just wasn't working. And they're playing these huge stadiums, and the coaching, the coaches they got, they were recognizable names. Some of the players were super recognizable, but I mean, when it comes down to it, the product isn't good and people aren't going, you're not going to survive with 3,000 people in the stands. It's not going to happen. And they, a couple weeks ago, or well, maybe not a couple weeks ago, but when this league started, they're saying expansion within 2 or 3 years is a very distinct possibility. And now here we are 52 days in and the league suspended and on the way to folding. It just sucks. Like, I was never overly worried that it was going to take jobs away. I didn't know how long it would last. And then week 2 kind of just reaffirmed all that. This is going to be a flash in the pan thing, and people stopped going to games. Manziel brought in a little bit of the crowd, but there is just no demand for more football than we already have. It's a saturated market, especially down in the States, with 300 NCAA teams and 32 professional teams, and then they still get CFL games, and there's still CFL fans down there, but just more football. There's no crowd for it. There's no demand for people wanting to see more.
It came in with all the hype, and it just couldn't live up to it. They had the TV deals. They had a bunch of cash.
Sounds like somebody that came to the CFL this past season.
So Kevin Glenn has had a contract with all 9 teams in this league. Mm-hmm. Could Manziel play in 4 leagues in 5 years?
He can't play in the XFL.
Well, according to Vince, he's not going to bring guys in with criminal records and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's the next thing we're looking at. The XFL next year. Apparently Vince is prepared to lose $500 million or invest, we'll call it that, over a 3-year period.
Yeah, and that's why WrestleMania tickets are $500.
But the AAF said almost the exact same things. Mm-hmm. They have Mark Trestman there, and now they also have Jamie Elizondo, who left the Ottawa Red Blacks. Some people thought it was an April Fool's joke.
The ultimate heel turn. It was so good.
But he's heading to Tampa Bay with Mark Trestman in the XFL next year. Who knows if they're going to make an entire season? You have to think this is in the back of these guys' minds.
Oh, for sure.
When they're trying to give spring football another shot. Jerry Glanville is going to be there as well. But the whole Jamie Elizondo thing, Marcel Desjardins and the Ottawa Red Blacks, I have seen
got what they deserved.
I have seen more and more of their fans saying that while OSAG is a great organization to deal with, sometimes Desjardins does not treat his coaches and his players with respect. There were Sir Vincent Rogers and Greg Ellingson said they didn't feel valued anymore. Jamie Elizondo was not allowed to interview with the Riders, and I think it was the Bombers or the Eskimos? He was not allowed.
I believe
he was not allowed to interview with other teams this offseason, so he just ended up and leaving and going to the XFL. The best thing about all this is the Red Blacks press release.
Oh, God.
What was the headline? Elizondo quits on the Red Blacks?
Or something like that, yeah.
Wow.
I love how long he waited to do this. they've already had coaches meetings, which he was a part of, and done other stuff like that. And then he's like, I'm going to leave. It's like, hey, Oseg, take this job and restaff it because I'm out of here. They screwed him over to a point. I know I said he was under contract, and you got to honor the contract. But if you're given that chance to move up in a position, you should be given every opportunity. And I know it was later than usual for that, but for them to just flat out say no and basically holding him hostage at that point, I totally get why he did what he did. I'm surprised he waited that long. Maybe it was just a long con. Once he was denied permission, he was like, well, you just wait. You'll get yours. And, yeah, he just waited and waited and waited and got an offer and took it, and that was that.
So the Red Blacks are in a really tough spot right now, and
they don't really need an OC this year because they're not going to have an offense.
What are they going to do?
Like, this could be worse than the Riders last year.
I don't know, man.
Dude.
The only thing is that the Red Blacks defense will not be able to put up the points the Riders defense did last year.
No, I'm just talking strictly on the offensive side of the ball.
I know.
But, yeah, okay, before we move on, though, since we're talking about Ottawa, did you happen to see an Odd Shark tweet that was sent out today?
No.
So, every year, obviously, they have futures. Somehow, some way, Ottawa is above Edmonton, Toronto, Montreal for Grey Cup odds. How are they above Edmonton?
Well, obviously they don't pay attention. That's not a safe bet.
BC's the favorite.
I thought you were going to put it at, they were going to put it like 1 million to 1. And yeah, I would put down $10 on that.
Ottawa's at plus 850. Edmonton's at plus 1100. Like, what?
That doesn't make sense.
Saskatchewan I would put Saskatchewan below Edmonton and Ottawa. Well, no, maybe not Ottawa. But Saskatchewan at plus 750, I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole either.
Wow.
But yeah, I saw that and I'm like, oh, that is some bad odds making. They're not going to get any money on Ottawa.
No, they are not.
I might go and drop some coin on Edmonton though at plus 1100.
Why not? How much are you going to put down?
Well, I mean, it depends on how much you give me back for your tax return.
Wait, there's a discount here? What's next on the CFL calendar? Well, we'll see what happens with collective bargaining. Training camp is only 6 weeks away. Rookie camp's open on May 15th. Full camp on May 19th. Looks like the CFL is going to hold a European lottery and draft this month as well. It actually looks like today, the day we're putting out the show, they're going to determine the first overall pick, and then they're going to pick some players next week on the 11th. And then May 2nd is the CFL draft, and before you know it, we're talking about games again. So I'm getting really excited, man.
Not only that, we are going to Labor Day this year together for the first time.
We're going to Labor Day.
And I have a feeling that all the weight I lose from now till then will be put back on that Friday and Saturday night.
We should weigh in before and after.
I haven't had a Coke in 44 days.
I haven't had a Coke in...
like 4 hours?
3 days? 3 days? Something like that.
I think I'm through the withdrawal stage now.
Nice. Once you make it through that, it's easy, breezy, beautiful cover girl.
I was just going to say cover girl, but I'm like, nope. Bite the tongue.
Brazilian Ty and Travis Currah, a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. We've got an Alberta election coming up in less than 2 weeks.
No.
A federal election coming
news.
up this fall, if not sooner, with all the drama that's been going on there. So I'm going to point you into the politics section of the Alberta Podcast Network. Head to the website, albertapodcastnetwork.com. Click politics. It's a shiny new website within the last few months as well. So we've got the Dave Berta podcast, Dave and Ryan talk politics, especially, Alberta politics, which are really heating up. And then speaking municipally, I screwed it up. I was practicing municipally before
close enough.
Before the show, and I still screwed it up. Taproot Edmonton presents a weekly discussion of municipal politics. Troy and Mac, they pay attention to all the stuff going on in Edmonton politics. So check those out. Things are going to get fun over the next couple of weeks.
Do you think your dad would want to do a political podcast with me, and do you think people would actually listen to it?
I think people would listen to it, but for all the wrong reasons.
That's very fair.
I'd listen to it, and
the best part is that I know he would record every episode without a shirt on.
That's true. That's 100% true. Oh, man. Rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. It's a 2-and-Out CFL podcast. We'll talk to you again before May.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.